The Bridger Wilderness is located just south of Yellowstone National Park in western Wyoming. It extends for something like 80 miles along the Continental Divide, and it's home to 7 out of 10 of the world's largest glaciers. With elevations rising above 13,000 feet, the Bridger Wilderness is well known for its breathtaking views of endless mountains and valleys and alpine lakes like this. But apparently, none of these things guarantee that its visitors are always happy. The following are actual responses given on comment cards to staff at the Bridger Wilderness. Take a look. Trails need to be wider so people can walk while holding hands. Trails need to be reconstructed. Please avoid building trails that go uphill. Too many bugs and leeches and spiders and spider webs. Please spray the wilderness to rid the area of these pests. Chairlifts need to be in some places so that we can get to wonderful views without having to hike to them. I like this one. The coyotes made too much noise last night and kept me awake. Please eradicate these annoying animals. Or how about this? A small deer came into my camp and stole my jar of pickles. Is there a way I can get reimbursed? Escalators would help on steep uphill sections. I like this one. The places where trails do not exist are not well marked. Yeah, no kidding. And then, of course, my personal favorite, a McDonald's would be nice at the trailhead. Yeah, because that's what we need more of in the national parks, is fast food restaurants, right? Now, of course, our natural reaction to all of these comments is to think to ourselves, what is wrong with these people? How can they be so petty and ridiculous and dissatisfied in the midst of such breathtaking scenery? But the truth is, these ridiculous comments actually reveal something that is true about every one of us. We do not like pain, not even the slightest discomfort. But then God comes to us today through His Word and suggests to us that pain and discomfort are inevitable, and that pain and discomfort are necessary, and that in at least some sense, pain and discomfort is actually good for us. 3 lessons for today from 2 Corinthians 12, and here they are. Number 1, pain is prevalent. Number 2, pain has a purpose. And finally, number 3, pain has power. That's sort of our outline for today. Pain is prevalent, pain has a purpose, and pain has power. So let's talk about each one. First, pain is prevalent. Now that, of course, means that pain is everywhere and affects everyone. And on the one hand, this is not a great revelation, right? I mean, we all know this already. But the point is, it affects everyone, meaning even the most sincere follower of Jesus. Even apostles like Paul experienced pain, even serious pain. And you can almost hear his own surprise over this in the words he uses to describe this reality. To keep me from becoming conceited, there was given me a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me, of all people. It's like Paul is saying, can you believe this? This kind of thing is happening to me. This is not the way we think it should work. We think that God's job is to spare us pain, or surely to spare it for someone like Paul, right? At a bare minimum, to spare someone like Paul really severe pain. I mean, after all, we think to ourselves, He's working for you, God. He's doing what you want Him to do. He's doing what you asked Him to do. And so if you've got the power to do anything, it seems like the very least you could do would be to make His life a little easier so that He could do the work you've called Him to do. But God doesn't do that. In fact, just before the section that we're reading for today in 2 Corinthians 12, Paul has just in the previous chapter given a laundry list of painful things that have happened to him, and specifically happened to him after he became a follower of Jesus. If you have your Bible open there, you can see it in 2 Corinthians 11. He says there that since he's committed his life to Jesus, he's been flogged and whipped and shipwrecked and imprisoned and much, much more. Paul knew that pain was prevalent. And now in our little reading for today, he's focusing our attention on a very specific and persistent source of his pain. Something that he calls his thorn. And you'll notice he never actually says what his thorn was. And that's a good thing for us because it means that we can read this text in the light of our own thorns. Right? If Paul had said, I have this thorn and it's cancer, or I have this thorn and it's my abusive father, well, then some of us might read this and say, well, I don't have cancer, or I don't have an abusive father, and so this text has nothing to do with me. But Paul leaves it generic and simply says that his thorn was a messenger of Satan sent to torment me. And interestingly, the various translations of the Bible aren't quite sure what to do with that last word there, torment. Look at this list here and you'll see what I mean. The King James says his thorn was sent to buffet me. Just to clarify, it is buffet, it's not buffet me. That's something different, right? I mean, it threw him around, it pushed him around. The RSV and ESV says harass me. NCV, GNB say it was sent to beat me. The ERV says it was sent to make me suffer. And so a thorn is all of these things, really. It's something in your life that beats you up and pushes you around and harasses you and torments you and causes you repeated pain in your life. A thorn is a problem that you can't fix, or a difficult person that you can't avoid, or a bad circumstance that you can't seem to push through. In fact, at the end of our little reading, Paul gives this list of words that really help us understand thorns better. Thorns, he says, there are things like weaknesses, or insults, or hardships, or persecutions, or difficulties. And if you really look at that list of things, you'll realize that they all kind of fall together into one of three categories. And I think it's helpful to think of them like this, that they're all things that make you say this, if only. That's what thorns are. They're things in your life that make you say, if only. So the first category of thorns is weaknesses. These are internal thorns. And these are the things that make you say, if only I wasn't. So for example, maybe you have this tendency to blow up in anger whenever you get disappointed, or to be jealous, or to be petty and selfish. Maybe you just talk way too much and listen way too little. But whatever it is, it's something bad that you do. And maybe you've tried to stop, you've tried to do better, and maybe you've even done better for a little while. But this thing, whatever it is, always seems to come back and cause problems in your life. And so you think to yourself often, if only I wasn't this way. Now that's one kind of thorn. The second category of thorns is persecutions and insults. And these are not internal thorns, they're external thorns. These are not things that you do, these are things that are done to you. And so they're not things that make you say, oh, if only I wasn't. They're things that make you say, no, if only he wasn't, or if only she wasn't. It might be a hurtful parent, or a difficult boss at work. Might be a difficult family member or a so-called friend who always seems to make your life difficult and uncomfortable. And no matter how hard you try, you just cannot totally avoid them. That's a second kind of thorn. And then Paul gives us a third category of thorn, and that's difficulties and hardships. And these aren't things that you do or things that are done to you by others. They're just tough circumstances that you can't change. And so they're not, if only I wasn't, or even if only he or she wasn't. These are the things in your life that make you say, if only this wasn't. Might be a chronic illness or long-term unemployment. It might be that you have to live somewhere that you don't want to live or work somewhere you don't want to work. It could be a financial struggle or a divorce or the death of someone near and dear to you. But whatever it is, it's something in your life that makes you think, if only this hadn't happened, my life would be so much better. That's a thorn too. And what we have to see is we all have something like this in our life, and maybe many things like this. Why? Because pain is prevalent. That's the first lesson. But now God wants us to also know this today. Secondly, that pain has a purpose. Paul says here that his thorn, and therefore all of our thorns as well, are not random or accidental. They're actually gifts from God. Look at what he says. He says, there was given me a thorn in my flesh. Given, that means it's a gift. And when he asked God 3 times to take it away, God said to him in essence, no, I want you to have this thorn. And again, we don't think of God that way. We think of God giving us blessings, not thorns. But the truth is, he gives us both. And he turns our thorns into blessings. And the way he does this, according to Paul, is not by the thorn itself, but through the message that the thorn brings to us. And this is so important to see. Every thorn we have has a message. In fact, according to Paul, every thorn has 2 messages. Paul says this, there was given me a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan. So that's one message. And then he says he pleaded with God to take it away from him, and then this, but he said to me, God said to me, my grace is sufficient for you. That's the second message. So 2 messages, one from Satan, one from God. What we have to understand is that every single thorn has this. Every thorn we could have brings us 2 messages. One from Satan and one from God. And we find our thorn's purpose only when we stop listening to the message from Satan and listen to the voice of God. So let me give you an example of what I mean here. Many people, including myself, by the way, think that Paul's thorn most likely was his terrible eyesight. Let me just show you a few verses in the Bible that might indicate this. First of all, in Acts 9, verse 18, when Paul is first converted on the road to Damascus, it says this. It says, something like scales fell from Paul's eyes. Now, we don't know what that means exactly, but something significant happened there. And it appears that whatever it was did some permanent damage. Because later in Galatians 4, he then says this, I can testify that if you could have done so, you would have torn out your eyes and given them to me. Now, this is weird, right? Why would someone tear out their eyes and give them to Paul? Well, this is an expression of love, and it's one that we still use today. Imagine if your young child gets diagnosed with cancer. You might very well say, I wish I could have that cancer so that they didn't have to. That's what's happening here. And then, at the end of Galatians, one more, it says this. It says, Paul writes, see what large letters I use as I write to you with my own hand. Now, what's happening here is that Paul has been dictating his letter to a secretary who has been doing the writing for him. But now at the very end, in these last words, he's adding a few words in his own handwriting to sort of personalize the text. And why is he writing, people ask, with large letters? Many Bible scholars guess that the reason is because he couldn't see them otherwise. And so you put all this together, and it appears that Paul had a very serious problem with his eyesight. And you can just imagine what a thorn that would be in the ancient world. I mean, it would be a thorn today, but it would really be a thorn in the ancient world where there were no glasses, no contact lenses, no Braille, no American Disabilities Act that helped blind people operate and live in the world. This was a very serious and significant problem. So what two messages did that thorn bring Paul? Well, we can just imagine what they would be. Satan's message was probably something like this. Paul, you can't do your ministry with bad eyesight. You'll never be able to accomplish what you could have accomplished with good eyes. You're going to be a failure. You're worthless to the kingdom of God. You might as well just give up. But what was God's message in the thorn? Maybe something like this. Paul, your ministry effectiveness comes from me, not from you. This thorn is going to force you to rely on my strength instead of your own. I'm going to guide you. And because of this thorn, people are going to know the amazing things you do are because of me, not because of you. And see, every thorn is like this. Every thorn brings two messages. And that's the buffeting that occurs with thorns. We buffet back and forth between Satan's message and God's message, having to decide every single day which one of the two we're going to listen to. So maybe your thorn is having an abusive father. And Satan's message to you is that you will never be more than what your dysfunctional father has always said you are. But God comes to you in that thorn and says, no, I am your real father. And you are loved and cherished, and I will always be here for you. But see, you have to decide every single day which one of those two you're going to listen to. Or maybe your thorn is a difficult financial situation. And Satan's message to you in that thorn is, you're doomed. You're never going to recover from this, right? Why bother even trying? But God's message to you in that thorn is, don't be afraid. You're not alone. I will provide for you. You can trust me. You're going to get through this. But again, every day, you have to decide which voice you're going to listen to. That's the second lesson. Pain has a purpose, and the purpose is to listen to God's message and the truth that He speaks to you in and through your thorn, your pain. And when we do that, then finally, number 3, pain has power. Now, Paul says this 3 different times in our reading. He says, God's power is made perfect in weakness. And then I will boast about my weaknesses so that Christ's power may rest on me. And then, for when I am weak, then I am strong. Just another way of saying, I am powerful. Now, why is that true, you have to ask? It's true because when you listen to the voice of God in the midst of your thorn, He fills you with a peace and strength and hope and joy that nothing can take away from you. Let me give you another example. This is a made-up example. It's not a true story, but I have seen this kind of thing happen many times in my life as a pastor. Let's imagine a couple is dating. And they date for a few years, and then it starts to get kind of serious, and then they even get engaged. And then after several months of engagement, just a little bit before the wedding, the guy suddenly changes his mind. And he says, you know what? I don't want to do this. I don't want to marry you. I don't really love you. And so he leaves, and he never comes back. And the woman is just left there absolutely devastated. She has invested years of her life in this relationship, and now suddenly, just like that, it's all over. Now, you talk about a thorn. That is something that will do a number on you. And so what does she think? She thinks, oh, if only. If only this hadn't happened, then I could be happy. So what are the two messages that thorn brings her? Satan's message is, you're all alone now. There must be something wrong with you. Right? You must be unlovable. No one's ever going to love you. You're never going to be happy now. But God's message to her is, I still love you. I always have. I'll never leave you. I can give you joy and satisfaction in your life that even the best husband in the world couldn't give you. It's going to be okay. And what happens to that woman if she starts listening to God's message instead of Satan's? Think about it. If she stays unmarried the rest of her life, she's okay. Now, she might be disappointed, but she's not devastated because she knows if she trusts God, she already has everything that she truly needs. She might want a husband, but she knows in her heart she doesn't need one. And what if the other thing happens? What if she eventually meets somebody else and ends up getting married? Don't you see that thorn is still a gift to her? Because now she will enter into her marriage from a position of strength and wholeness, not a position of need and emptiness. And so she won't be looking to her husband to fill up her empty life because she already knows, long before she's married, that she has everything she truly needs from God. And she will have a much better marriage because of that thorn than she ever would have had without it. Either way, she's going to be okay. Now, what is that? That's power. And that is the kind of thing that Paul has in mind for all of us when he teaches us to say, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. Let's bow our heads and pray.